Well, I hope this finds everybody doing well on this beautiful, bright, sunshiny day, and in lieu of what we've been having to contend with, especially I feel almost like I'm handcuffed, even though I've been retired all these 8.5 years now, but I still feel like I'm kind of confined to the house. But we're going to get through all of this. But I just hope that we have all those people in the Jonesboro area in our prayers today, and light of Brother Kerry's message this morning. I hope everybody got to see it, or they're planning on watching that sometime today. That we see that those people have been up there, have also been are having to weather the storm. And I just pray that we'll continue to pray for them and pray for our country and our leaders, that they'll make the right decisions in regard to everything that's going on. But I want to continue our lesson today with the third piece, or the third wedge of our money pie, and our author has labeled it as debt. Who wants to be in debt? Who wants to be debt free? Who is debt free? Who is in debt? Is being in debt a sin? Would God want us to be in debt? Well, let's see what the Bible has to say in a couple of places about that. If you'll turn to Proverbs 22:7, it says this: the borrower is servant to the lender. And verse 26 of that same chapter says, don't be one of them that strikes hands, or of them that are sureties for their debts. That has to do with, like people used to, they shook hands. And that was just as good as a signature. It didn't even have to be notarized. But people, when they struck hands, they said, I'm going to pay, or I agree to do what it is that we've agreed upon here. And it says, are them that are sureties of their debts. Well, in the Old Testament, they gave themselves to work for a master for a certain period of time. Normally it was 6 years, and they were to be forgiven of their debt on the 7th year and given back their freedom. But then we can look in Luke 14:28, where Jesus is teaching, and he says, if you intend to build a tower, do you not first count the cost to see if you have sufficient to finish it? And this has to do again with, are we going to go in debt to build something? Once again, I will ask, and I'm going to do this more than once, is it a sin to be in debt? And the last scripture I want you to think about is, or look at, is Romans 13:8. And Paul wrote to that group of Christians there in Rome, he said, owe no man anything. Frankly, I don't know how anyone can buy a house or even a decent vehicle without securing a loan and paying it out over an extended period of time. If you have a good enough job that you can put back savings, enough money that you can eventually pay cash for something, that's great. But I really don't know anybody that's in that boat. However, borrowing money means that I am promising to repay you or whoever it is that I'm borrowing that money from, because I have a guaranteed income that makes sure I'm going to be able to make my payments. It's just like when you go to buy a house, they're going to want to know your income, how much you have coming in every month, to determine whether you can afford that, the loan is going to take to buy that or not. But does that mean that I have guaranteed income? I'm saying that I do because I'm going to pay that debt. But how many of us have guaranteed income? Look what's going on right now. A lot of people have been laid off, and I don't know how many thousands have already applied for unemployment compensation. And then the government says they're going to give people this money out of the stimulus to help pay their bills or whatnot. But how far is that going to go on a lot of debt? But it'll be better than nothing. But here again, that we're saying that my job is going to continue to allow me to be able to make the payments on this money that I'm borrowing from you for whatever it is that I'm buying. But are there dangers in having debt? The number one danger of debt is stress. Because some people, they're afraid their job may not be secure. or if it looks like the work is slowing down, maybe they've got too close, their debt is so close to what they're bringing in, they're afraid they're not going to be before their bills if something all of a sudden comes up. It's a big surprise. But like I said, the number one danger in debt is stress, and debt is an uncomfortable reality. I don't like debt. I don't know of anybody that just says, hey, let's just go get in debt and let's have some fun doing it. I venture to say that the majority of debt in this country is unsecured debt, meaning there is no collateral to collect if the debt is not paid. I'd hate to see anybody lose their home, lose a vehicle, lose anything that they bought and it's still owed for because they've lost their job, the income is not there. And remember, we're not guaranteed tomorrow. So is that income secured or unsecured? I'll also venture to say that credit card debt is out of control in this country because so many people, they max out that credit card, they're paying the minimum payments on it at a extremely accelerated interest rate, and they never get ahead. All they're doing basically is just paying the interest on the principal that's owed. Who can get a credit card? That's another big problem. You know, even at my age, and we still get credit card applications in the mail all the time, and I know y'all do too. Is it right to avoid not to pay your credit card bill like a lot of advertisements says today? Says you don't have to pay that credit card off. And I do believe that people are listening to those advertisements and they're getting credit cards and they're using them, they're maxing them out, and with no intent of ever paying off those credit card companies. Does our country depend on debt for financial stability? You ever thought about that? How are our banks operated? Where do they get their money to operate? In charging people for borrowing money. Our government has just passed a huge stimulus bill, what, 2.2 trillion or something like that? Do you know how much $1 trillion is? You can put that in other terms, but $1 trillion is a million million. A million million. That'd be just like 1 million people having $1 million. That's an extremely large amount of money. And where did we get it? Did they just print it off? I seen a deal on TV the other day. They're printing money. I don't know how they back up that or how security. I don't know what the Federal Reserve does to back all that up. But our country's in debt, an astonishing debt. If we really knew how much that the whole bill was. Do you see anywhere in the scriptures that I read earlier where it said debt, again, is a sin from which we are to abstain? Some pretty good advice over there, huh? What does Solomon mean when he said that the debtor is a slave to the lender? That means we have to continue to work day after day after day to pay that off. We're indebted to him. Not only we're indebted, we need to use a word a little bit stronger than that. We're obligated. Do people know what obligations are today and how to fulfill obligations? Or is that a thing of the past? But we're obligated to pay that lender back every penny. And most of the time, anytime I've ever borrowed money, there's always interest tacked to it. It wasn't just a free money, money that I could borrow interest free. So I'm going to pay back more than I actually borrowed. And that's the thing about the credit cards, like I said a while ago, with those extreme accelerated interest rates. Need to be careful of how we borrow. But the interest, of course, is on top of the principal. What about what Paul wrote in Romans, to owe no man anything? This may be meant to be verbatim, and I may be stretching this just a little bit. But if I borrow money and I pay back on a schedule that I've promised to pay back on, in other words, I pay when it's due or before it's due, and there's nothing ever in the arrears, I'm making my payments on time. Yeah, I'm in debt, but do I really owe anything until the next payment? Owe no man anything? Does that mean that just like if I let my electric bill go past due date, I owe something, and I'm in debt then? But if I pay it on time And they've agreed to allow me to borrow that money for this amount of time, but I make my payments on that debt promptly. Does that mean, can Paul mean that? Just don't be in the arrears on what you owe? I don't really know. We just have to let God lead us into that. And then I thought about, in light of the way our economy is going right now, have you been keeping up with the Dow Jones? It has failed, and it's come back up, and it's fallen. It's come back up a little more, but it's not where it was, say, 3 to 4 weeks ago. What happened in 1929? The stock market crashed, and people were committing suicide because they lost everything they had in savings, I guess, and I guess they had so much debt that they didn't see any way out of it. I don't know. I read a little bit about it, not a lot. But do you know how far the Dow fell in 1929? 25%. At one time a few weeks ago, the Dow was at over 29,000, and it's been to 19,000. Do you know how much of a fall that is? That's over 30, or about 34%. And I hadn't heard about anybody jumping out of 20-story buildings or committing suicide because of that at this point in time. And it makes me believe that our country is more economically stable than it was back then. So we've been blessed. There's no doubt about that, financially and other ways as well. But we all need to make faith-based financial decisions. When I say faith-based, that's using the scripture, what I read this morning, and there may be some more in there that we could find and try to find out a little bit more for ourselves. But sometimes we just need to realize we need to do without, rather go in debt on some things, and we need to save enough money for those purchases that we desire, whatever they might be. But sometimes we also need to change our lifestyle and only purchase what we can afford. Sometimes we spend more money than we're making, and that's a ludicrous decision. We should never do that. Today's debt puts a heavy burden on tomorrow's flexibility. It means I'm going to have to work tomorrow to continue to pay that debt, and the next day, and the next day, and the next day. And as I said earlier, we're guaranteeing those creditors that we're going to pay them back, and that I'm going to have income coming in to make those payments. Everyone needs a savings account of some kind to prepare for both needs and wants. It don't have to be a lot, but we all need to be putting back a little bit all the time, earmarked only for special needs. Savings is biblical, by the way. I mean, we can look at the parable of the talents. To me, whenever the man left, or the master left, and he left those 3 men in charge of money, they invested it. And you can call that a type savings if you want to, or 2 of them did, and we know what happened, what he told the third. Not only that, we look back in the Old Testament, we'll see that the law told the people, said that you plant and harvest for 6 years, and you save up enough in those 6 years, because the 7th year you're going to let your ground lay fallow and let it kind of replenish itself. So that was preparing for the future. And that's another type of savings that the Bible teaches about. We should make wise debt decisions. Now, how do you make wise debt decisions? Well, I don't know that this is necessarily the most or the best order, but I wrote down some things. I said, pray, compare the rates and the time at which you're going to pay it back, and pray. Seek wise counsel, whether it's a good investment or not an investment, but a debt that you can go into that you can afford. Seek wise counsel, pray. Plan to pay it off sooner than it's really due. And pray some more. Prayer is a big deal on anything for the believer. Don't let consumer debt and credit card debt rule your life. The best advice that I can give you is don't obligate yourself beyond that which you can repay. And remember, don't let your money and your stuff control you. I just pray that this lesson will be of some use to you. Pray that you're doing well. Everybody's staying well, and staying busy doing something. But let's just continue to pray, because we know God is in control, but He has His way. We don't know His ways are higher than ours, and that we'll do our best to always put Him first in our lives. Thank y'all.